Talk about modeling and design. Hopefully this will, it's not clear what it would look like on your screen or through the video, but I see a lot of things that look like they're spinning. And of course they're not spinning. It's kind of an illusion of motion. You can consider this very similar to the art example. The difference is this is more of a design example. You may be wondering, art, designs, like what's the difference? And this is kind of worth sort of covering in this section. So art is a creative activity that's generally done by one or more individuals, and usually it's done for let's take an individual artist. It's done because the artist is expressing themselves. Now, design is something you do for someone else or you do for a client. And so this is a bit of a fuzzy relationship because you could produce something and the question is, well, did you produce it for someone or did you produce it for yourself? If you produced it for yourself, typically you might consider it more of an art. If you produced it for a client, you consider it more of design. Now, of course, this gets difficult because if you go back in time, at least in terms of Western art, you're dealing with a church that basically funded all the artwork. So they were the client. So the question is, did what the craftspeople do, or the artists or designers? And so again, there is a fuzzy boundary, but this is what I described as sort of one way of looking at the difference between art and design. So this will be about design. Now there's an area within design there's a couple of areas. One is called graphic design. Another is industrial design. Industrial design means you're designing something, you're working for a company, which is a form of industry, and you're doing design work for them. UX stands for user experience design. And it's kind of a cutting edge area. UX is where a lot of designers do their work today. It doesn't mean there's no more graphic design, but it just means that use of the computer has provided this wealth of possibility for doing UX work and UX. And there's a lot of modeling in UX. So what you're looking at is sort of one example. You might say, well, we're going to create a storyboard. And a storyboard typically is a series of panels that, not unlike writing, you go from left to right. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Well, that's fairly clear. That provides a temporal-based model of a process, something that's happening. So we call this storyboarding. And storyboarding is used very much in animation as well. The very interesting kind of diagram called the UX user flow diagram, or UX user flow design. And one way of, sometimes this is talked about also within the context of wireframing. You'll see at the bottom of this slide there's a mention about wireframing and how user flow might be said to emerge from wireframing. But what's interesting here is this, while it looks complicated, really all you're looking at is a bunch of screens on a smartphone. And so if you start with a smartphone screen that looks like this over on the left, if the user presses this button, then this screen comes up. And if you think about it, many of the devices in your home, including your TV set and so on, operate in this fashion. You get a kind of hierarchical menu. And from the standpoint of the UX designer, you get a hierarchical, what you see is what you get kind of structure that's a network. Interestingly, the user flow design, this is something I think I covered a little bit later, but if not, I'll present it now. Within computer science, this is called a finite state machine. So, different disciplines represent different cultures, and they have multiple different names for the same thing essentially. But the UX flow diagram is an interesting example from design. And so this is just another aspect of this. And there's software that you can use to create these things, right? So software that you're able to use. One that I have used before a little bit is Adobe DX. So a relatively new program, but a program that allows you to construct such diagrams. I'd be remiss in not talking about the nature of computer-aided design, CAD, and note that if you're doing design in that fashion, what you do is you create a model that when run or executed will create some piece of geometry. And what's interesting about computer-aided design, what differentiates computer-aided design from, say, creating a model in Maya, which we'll get to in animation, is that computer-aided design is very much fixed to the real world and fixed to real world measurement, millimeters, meters, inches, feet. Whereas if you're wanting to create some innovative representation of a rhinoceros, for example, hence the name Rhino, which is a piece of software, or a giraffe or whatever, but you don't care about whether it's accurate from a measurement standpoint, that's a different kind of modeling. It's very similar, but different in the end result and what you're going for. And the reason is typically in using Grasshopper, which creates these models right here. You can see kind of this network of boxes that you see behind the green thing. The green thing is what's created when you run these network of boxes. And the network of boxes can be considered a process model for purposes of computer-aided design and indeed computer-aided manufacturing. By manufacturing, we may be talking about 3D printing, laser cutting, or some other function.